Well, it's interesting. The work is going to change, I think, in a few dimensions. For starters, there'll be less travel because you don't need to travel Monday through Friday to a client site. And heck, when I started in consulting, we were traveling Monday through Friday. And the big breakthrough was to say, no, we're going to travel through Thursday nights.
It was a big breakthrough. We're laughing about it, but it's big.
No, it was big.
For every
now,
one of us, including our wives.
Yeah, well, exactly. And
welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT. My name is Robert Schmidt. I'm Deloitte's Chief Futurist, also known as Mr. IoT. And today on my show, we have Nidal Haddad. You are leading our ecosystems and alliances. It's changed since we last talked, hasn't it?
It's changed or morphed, depending on how you look at it. And so the last time Robert and I talked, I was leading a digital market offering.
That's right.
Out here in the US. And so as we were joking before we started the interview, ecosystems is the new digital.
Ecosystems is the new digital. I like that. Explain that. What do you mean by that? I mean,
well, when digital first came onto the scene, if you will, again, scene being in air quotes, as if there was really a place for it to go, digital became the underpinning of a lot of business strategy. It became the reason why we need to go do things. The consumer or the end customer is more digital, and it needs to have a set of services and products that are more digital in nature. And so every company, whether you're in serving consumer or whether you're B2B, was moving towards digital, whether it's called digital transformation, digital customer, and everything in between. Well, since then, digital became kind of everything and nothing at the same time. It's just a part of business.
It's like how e-business and the web was a thing, and now it's like everywhere, right?
Exactly. We don't say e-business anymore. We just when we refer to that
business.
channel, it's just business, or is it is it in the brick and mortar, or is it in e-commerce? That's about as far as you would go there. Mm-hmm. With ecosystems, what's been happening, first of all, alliances for consulting and for technology companies has been the stable and kind of core place to make to derive revenue, drive business. And when technology is super important to consulting companies, because when we talk about our business strategy, the technology stuff is what we use to actually take those strategies and make them come to life. Mm-hmm. Without the technology, a strategy is just a PowerPoint presentation. With the technology, a strategy can become a transformation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really key. And so alliances are becoming very important. But what's starting to happen is you see companies like Amazon doing vertical integration. Not every company has the level of capital, frankly, to be vertically integrated, but also it may not make sense for a company to be vertically integrated. So what do? They turn to their partners. Simple example, Deloitte wants to start a smart homes business, or smart buildings business. Well, we don't employ any HVAC people. We don't have architects in the building architecture standpoint. We don't employ electricians. But you need all those things to build a smart building. But who has those skills? Our clients do. It could be Siemens, PTC, Johnson Controls, and there's lots of other ones out there. They all do these kinds of things in this space. So what we're doing now, we're now starting to partner, not with one at a time, but with multiple at a time, creating an ecosystem. And our definition of ecosystem has become very, very simplified in order to help people understand it. An alliance is a marketplace relationship between Deloitte and one other firm. An ecosystem is between Deloitte and two or more other firms. And they both have the same end result, to drive the marketplace, to help our clients solve their problems, but now in a more integrated fashion, in a more complete fashion, and frankly, in a more complex fashion. Because business today is much more complex, it's much more global, as you know, and it's going to require more help from your business partners, who can sometimes be your competition as well.
I find this so interesting, right? And I think you tell me, it's definitely true in the space I work in IoT, right? That companies now that might have competed before actually now find that there is things where they actually better partner together because of business model changes or because you just need more partners. So this one-to-one alliance works less and less. Is that true in very many other areas, that it becomes much more an ecosystem play, that you work with competitors and so forth?
It's true in every area. And if you want to compete, you have to work with your competition, because we are, I'm going to say, roughly the same age. So we have seen, we're over 30, right?
I'm not going to say for you, I'm over 50, but I leave that for you.
Okay, well, like I said, we're both about the same age. And what we've seen in business cycles is you've seen the distributed to centralized, centralized to distributed, and back. It goes back and forth. And once upon a time, the dominant word processor was WordPerfect. Remember that?
I don't remember that.
All right. Well,
I was a Word guy to start with.
Oh, okay. Well, it was WordPerfect before that. It was DisplayWriter before that. It was PFS.
So did you do Lotus 123 also?
Lotus 123 and VisiCalc. If you really want to date me, I'm pretty much open book there. Very old technology, but those were standalone.
So I'm a year behind you.
Yeah, they're standalone best of breed products.
Yeah.
Right. I was a WYSIWYG guy. Remember back then? Remember that word? But those are discrete best of breed products. And then over time, Microsoft came in and brought in at the time, a mediocre word processor, an okay spreadsheet, and an okay graphics package, but put it together for the first time in this suite of things. And over time, larger companies, whether it's Microsoft buying a number of products for Dynamics, whether it's back office, front office, whether it's Oracle buying up PeopleSoft, to Siebel, to JD Edwards, and a number of others, all of a sudden these suites came into play. And now with the cloud has afforded a lot of technologists to take their ideas and scale them in a way without the need for infrastructure that they've never had before. So the new best of breed stuff is now available. Well, but what's happening, you need the best of breed stuff to work with everything else in order for it to go into enterprise. Best of breed by itself is nice. Best of breed that you can integrate is the requirement. And that's where the suites come into play, because they have this pre-integration. However, the suites themselves in the cloud space and in the IoT space are going to take some time. So in the meantime, what are companies doing? They're integrating with each other technically. You see competitors now working together. I'll give you a couple examples. And they're actually all centered around Microsoft. So Microsoft, SAP, and Adobe announced this open data initiative. Basically, they're sharing the data model for the front office. So if you have SAP's Hybris product plus Microsoft Dynamics plus Adobe's AEM, they can all share the same data without having the need for middleware or low-level integration. Now, the promise is not there yet, but three distinct companies in three different areas are working together as if they were a suite when they're three separate companies. The one I like the most is Microsoft and Oracle announced an integration about a month ago or so, a technical integration between their platforms. Now,
and where do we fit into these groups? I mean, I'm just curious because I know we work with all of them.
Well, we work with all of them, and for us, it's these are now examples of things the client could do. Now, just because a client could do it doesn't mean they're able to do it, and oftentimes they need help. And so that's when we get the call. And so when we have an Oracle client or a Microsoft client, meaning a client who has one of these technologies in play, and they say, hey, we can now integrate. You can integrate the technology, you can integrate the data, but the process and the change management and the strategy that it actually supports, that has nothing to do with Microsoft or Oracle. That's where we come in working with the client and their teams, business teams, IT teams, to actually help put those things together. That's where the real power is. And so for us, all these things have done is accelerate potential solutions we might propose to a client anyway, and it might be a little bit easier to integrate now that Microsoft and Oracle aren't at war suing each other. They're actually working with each other. Then over time, some things will happen. That interoperability will mean that you can use Google's AI with AWS's voice with Microsoft's, fill in the blank, data repository or something. But the idea is that you're no longer stuck with one stack. And that's really important for the enterprise because every client has a unique stack. There's no all Oracle client or all Microsoft client or all GCP or all AWS. Every client, especially if they're involved in mergers and acquisitions or just growing their business, they're going to have things that are going to be unique. The fact that the bigger things can now talk to each other more seamlessly means that they're okay with the pieces they have. They can now make them work better. And that's where, frankly, the consultants certainly benefit because we have the human expertise, the human power, the intellectual capability to actually make those things happen. and we do it more often than anybody else. So bringing us in allows them to actually get there faster, but also have a certain level of certainty that they'll achieve their objectives. So for us, it's great. They're just helping us get to the answer that we were going to help the client with anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of like, I think when I think of my very little level, I would have thought, well, we would have done that integration, so therefore we're losing business. When in reality, it gets us actually to what the client wants, value, business case faster, because now the responsibility of making these basic low-level integrations is on them rather than on us or on our client.
That's correct.
And so that really means we can go in and just make the value happen rather than focus on some low-level integration. Do you agree with that?
No, you're spot on. So what like Microsoft, SAP, and Adobe, they're changing their data model. No amount of integration can make that happen.
Yeah, and it would change every time they change something, we got to fix something, which is like so much work.
Exactly.
And now it's on them.
Now it's on them. And so instead, we can focus on, as you said, the higher value things. So where we're going to automate processes, we're going to implement new processes, we're going to make things more efficient, we're going to help them save some money, help them make money in some cases. So you focus on the bigger picture things because of that low-level integration is kind of on its way. And it's not that way in all cases, but it certainly helps that the market's moving in that direction.
Yeah. So I want to do a play of words with you, and I wonder if you like this. We called ourselves Deloitte Digital. I almost sort of liked when someone started calling us Digital Deloitte. And I think this is so true for many other companies. They come to us and say, I want to become digital. Do you like that play with words that you start calling companies digital so-and-so? Or are you sort of like, what's your reaction to that?
Personally, I'm not sure. I mean, I have an affinity to Deloitte Digital because I helped lead the organization along with my partner, Andy Main, for a number of years. And so...
I still have it on my signature, by the way.
And I still have a few business cards left, and we shouldn't forget Mike Brinker, who was kind of the original father or grandfather, if you will, just to date Mike a little bit, since he'll watch this video eventually. But I do think that
he will tweet about it now that we mentioned it. By the way.
There you go. But I do think that like Digital Deloitte versus Deloitte Digital, I sometimes get a bit. I squirm in my seat a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Only because this is a Deloitte thing, honestly. Because we actually had an initiative to actually turn ourselves to become more digital, and somebody thought they were cute and called that initiative Digital Deloitte. And all it did was, when you're running Deloitte Digital, was confuse folks.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Again, it was an internal thing. It didn't really, nobody ever saw it outside of the walls of Deloitte. But just like we talked about, where digital has become just the new thing of business, it's just the way business is done. So to add the word digital, you might as well add the small letter E to your name. Remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
I worked for one of those companies for a while with a small E.
So what do you think, sort of like, if you look out 5 years for Deloitte, and I'm not interested in numbers, I'm just sort of like, where are we going to be as a company in terms of what we do? How is our work going to change, you and my work and the people that start with us? Well,
it's interesting. The work is going to change, I think, in a few dimensions. For starters, there'll be less travel, because you don't need to travel Monday through Friday to a client site. And heck, when I started in consulting, we were traveling Monday through Friday. And the big breakthrough was to say, no, we're going to travel through Thursday nights.
It was a big breakthrough. We're laughing about it, but it's big.
No, it was big.
For every one of us, including our wives.
Yeah, well, exactly. And even now, our teams get flexibility depending on the client situation.
Yeah. So less travel.
Less travel.
More video.
More video conference. There'll be teams that are remote, and not just remote in the U.S., but remote globally. There'll be a lot more automation. So whether that automation would be, I'll call it the digital workers, like using an RPA vendor, or whether that automation is really more the systems talking to each other with some AI, right? And then there'll be more IP infused with the work itself. And I think bringing more assets, and that's what I mean by IP, bring more assets to help the work along. The fact that you're doing it, here or somewhere else becomes less of an issue. So it's really the digitalization of the work, the automation of the work, and then the location of the work that's going to change. It's the future of work, but it's for all of us. And there's a book called The Tipping Point, which has been out for a number of years. There's even a follow-up. But one of the interesting things that it said in there, it talked about just how things evolve over time. And we talk about today about how the robots are going to take over the world. Well, the robots have effectively been taking over the world since the invention of just man. Because once upon a time, when elevators, as an example, we had elevators in buildings. That's when buildings became over 3 and 4 stories. Well, there used to be an elevator operator who would push the button, crank the dial, open the door, do the stuff until the electronic panel came in. Once upon a time, when you
I do miss that panel in this building, by the way. I step into this elevator
I
every
know, you
time
can't
and
go
I
anywhere.
try to push the button, and I was like, there was none.
it's all automated, right?
Exactly.
And we track your movements. We know what floor you're on, and so we use that for space planning purposes.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
the digitalization of the work. So the real estate professionals now use all this great data that we have. Remember, once upon a time, well, I don't think you and I were actually alive back then, but you wanted to make a phone call, somebody else on the other end put a line in another hole somewhere, and I think, that type of work is no longer around. Toll booths. Remember, there used to be these people that would sit in these little tiny huts all over the tollways. At least here in Illinois, we have tollways still. That job is now gone because it's effectively all automated. And so,
So you're saying automation has been happening anyhow?
been happening anyway.
So therefore, what are we afraid of? We're still working. So therefore, what's going to be the next for us? I'm thinking, I love this sort of. I always think of RPA as a way of doing it. Automation, right? Then there is AI, and then you talked about sort of the assets. What are we going to automate? What will you and I not have to do anymore? What will our clients not have to do anymore?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think some of the business forecasting that we do today, that's done by our finance people, reviewed by our business people, then they go back and forth. This number's not big enough. That's going to be done by the system. It's going to be done by AI. Why? AI is centered with data, right? That's the core mechanism of AI is the data. Without the data, it's just a fancy algorithm that runs. With the data, that algorithm can learn over time. And what does it learn? It learns new connections between the data. And they can make smart decisions. It can extrapolate faster and with more permutations than we can as humans. And so no longer will the gut feel by an executive be a thing that we go by. Now, what does the system say? And I say again, system in that magical air quotes, but what does it come back to us and tell us? And I think a lot of the things we're going to see, we're going to go from things that were done by humans to things that were assisted by some sort of computer device, and even that assist has a gradient path in terms of simple macro assisting, right? Because if I use the term, I would piss off everybody in the RPA space. RPA is just a fancy macro that we all learn how to do in Excel.
I have said this 2 times and I got in trouble.
Exactly.
But yes.
That's why I preface it. I know it's a lot more than that with digital workers and digital FTEs, but we're slowly those concepts are slowly changing us from this kind of macro approach to more of a system approach to all of a sudden a more artificially intelligent focused approach. We're still a ways away. Again, 3 to 5 years. It's the data. We still have to sort out as a world, and then as a nation, then as business people, kind of in that order, what's acceptable data to have. And this usually runs around the consumer. Okay, so let's remove the consumer out of the picture for a second. Let's talk about business to business. The data that we have on client ABC or on industry XYZ is data we created. It's data we collected. It's data that we massaged and did things with. Then we're going to use that data. That's where the advances are going to be made in business. It's not going to be, yes, the consumer will always be out in front because of the volume. There's more consumers with more transactions, and then you can actually do more things there. But in the business world, that's where the real impact's going to be made with a lot of the AI, with the future of work. And it's going to be those of us who are staying and evolving with that technology that will continue to have work. I have a real good friend of mine I went to college with, and he used to run the treasury pit at the Mercantile Exchange here in Chicago. He had one of the biggest roles on the exchange floor. Every nickel, all the runners, they all reported into him. And he and I went out for a cocktail about 10 years ago or so, and I said, Dave, you really need to start thinking about what your next job's going to be. He's like, what are you talking about? I got the best job in the world, right? And I said, well, yes, but it's gonna be computerized. It's gonna be automated. You're gonna be out of a job before you know it. And long story short, Dave did not heed the advice from his consultant, which was free, We do give out free advice, and sometimes it's even good advice when we give it out. But what ended up happening was, everything got computerized. That whole thing got shut down. It's all done now through handheld terminals. Nobody even leaves. There's not even a floor.
How is he doing?
He actually works in a different business now.
Oh, okay.
Involves trains.
Interesting. I have to tell you that you picked profit forecasting, and that thing just was awesome. I love this. I mean, I did when my very first job was doing that, and it fascinated me because I remember going into a meeting with some form of brand and giving them all my analytics, and the brand was said, "No, you got to make that number," and then we adjusted the whole thing until it made that number, and it made no sense.
Right.
But it's sort of, yeah, exactly. And so what I got reminded of now was Michael Rayner, and I'm going to butcher this. He's going to kill me for this, but I'm going to put a link up there, I promise. He created a model where he took a ton of data from public companies and sliced and diced it. And then with that, you can go and say, well, if I go and say that next year and the next 2 years and the next 2 years, I'm going to make these numbers, he maps this against what actual performance has been over the last, I forgot the number. He showed it to me. I was very honored that he showed it to me because Michael Rayner is way more out there on the strategy side than me. But it's fascinating, and you get some real reflections, because I've had this often happen when I worked for corporations where you give them a goal and you go like, how am I going to make that? And there were hard data of saying that, well, you might, but here's the chance of you really getting there. So very fascinating.
Right.
Model.
Is the number the result of a strategy, or is it the result of an aspiration?
Exactly.
More oftentimes, it's the result of an aspiration, because I need it to be 10% growth. I need it to be X billions of dollars or whatever it might be, as opposed to the data tells me we're here today, we're here, and we're here. Here's where we're going to go tomorrow. Over time, as the systems get smarter, as we feed it more data, and the data we feed it are basically the forecast, the actual results, and the parameters we can establish with that, and start determining the correlations and say, well, you know what? If you did these things, you can get this number to go from X to X plus Y. And I think that's when these systems really become truly powerful and potentially even dangerous, in the sense that if we don't also continue to think, we just can't have the things think for themselves or think for us. That's when it becomes, I think, a problem.
So I'm going to ask you a personal question to close out with. I picked up a word, and I love the word, and I'm curious, what's your aspiration for yourself? Not for Deloitte.
No, that's interesting.
I'm really curious, what's your aspiration? And maybe you have 2 or 3, I have no idea, but I'm curious.
No, well, first of all, I guess at a professional level, my personal aspiration is really pretty simple: to actually leave a legacy back with the firm around ecosystems and alliances. And while I don't necessarily like the idea of being the grandfather of these things, but I would love for folks in the firm who are younger today, who are maybe newer partners, directors, sometime down the road, to say, yeah, we helped go, we went from here to here because of Nidal's leadership. I mean, that's my personal aspiration. I don't want to be CEO or anything like that. I want to take us from here to
Leave
here.
a legacy.
So it's
something
a legacy
that people think of in a positive way.
Correct.
That.
But my most important legacy are my kids. And so I've got 3 children. My oldest is a manager here at Deloitte. My youngest will become a new analyst here in about a year. And I have a middle son who works as a producer out in LA with a very well-known media company. And he's following his dream and passion. And so while it's not the family business, it's the family business.
Okay, we get the hint.
Yeah, it's very personal in a variety of ways. And so leaving that legacy also means leaving the legacy that my kids...
You might be a grandfather sooner than you know.
Well,
I'm sorry to break that bubble for you.
No, I'm going to be a grandfather sooner than I probably realize, because my son's about to get engaged.
Oh,
and
okay,
so
good. Congrats.
I just hope that his soon-to-be fiance will see this video, because she doesn't know it's coming. So
Okay, awesome.
It's a surprise, obviously.
Okay, so we'll keep it back until then.
Yeah, I
so
don't
the
think so.
legacy in your kids.
Yeah, it's really
and so on a
that.
personal level, beside your kids, in your personal life, any other things you have?
Oh, I'm just getting in shape. I've started doing the Peloton.
That's
I've lost
awesome.
20 pounds in the
Congrats.
last 3 months. I'm using Noom. I don't know if I can make a recommendation, but it's a great app. And for those of us that think that we're smarter than the app, we're actually not. I'm actually doing what it tells me to do, because I think I know more. I'm spiting it by doing what it tells me to do. It's kind of ass backwards, I think, but it works. It works for me. I track all
That's
my
awesome.
food. I've been doing really well, and so my it's really more of a get myself into kind of in better shape. And I have an aspiration that by December 7th of what is this year? 2019.
2019, yeah.
By December 7th of 2020, I will be at my high school wrestling weight.
Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can join in on your thing. 2 years ago, I had a spurt. I lost a lot of weight. I worked out regularly. I went Orange Theory Fitness because that music and someone telling me what to do was great. And then I ran a Tough Mudder. Do you want to do a Tough Mudder with me in a year?
I don't know what that is, but it sounds like fun. I'll be in shape to do
We're gonna
whatever it
both
is.
get really muddy because you go
muddy,
through
I'm all
mud
over.
things, but it's sort of a thing where you do either 5 miles or 10 miles. There is 10 or 20 obstacles, and you
Oh.
cannot get through the obstacles on your own. And so what happens is you
that
help
would
each
be
other,
fun.
and you don't have
Let's
to.
do
There's
it.
no timing, but you just gotta do 5 or 10 miles.
Let's do it.
Tough
I'm in.
Mudder.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Having your goal. Thank you, Nidal. I
Thank you.
appreciate you being here.
I appreciate it.
We've coming to the end of another coffee chat. And if you missed any of today's show, please come and check out on YouTube our playlist or check out any of our past shows. And with that, thank you for watching.